Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Mish-Mashing Battle Lounge with the 2MK team. It is our Street Fighter V day, and if you would like to join us, there appear to still be 3 slots open in our lounge. Character select is on today. You are looking for Rillian, and this is a 3 rounds, first to 2 lobby. In general, you can expect that if you are close enough to the Atlantic Ocean that you could probably reach it and have good internet, then you will have a good connection to most, if not everyone, in our lounge today. Today we are looking into confusing or strange hit and hurt boxes, as this is a really important thing to pick up as an experience skill in games, not something that you really can attribute to fundamentals, but a thing that you gain more understanding of as you improve at the game as a whole. It affects your ability to whiff punish, your ability to stand just out of range of things, and therefore to either execute corner guard on your opponent or avoid being corner guarded. We're not so much talking about the specific properties of moves, though that will often come up, nor even the frame data, but simply, does this move hit, and if it doesn't, why doesn't it hit? We will, however, be talking about those few moves that hit differently depending on the setup. They do come up often enough, particularly in this game, that learning something about them might be helpful to you.
Round 2. Fight.
Bison, for example, as a character has a lot of different misleading options. Some of them hit you even if you've tried to armor, simply because there are multiple hits in a very short space of time. But then, when you do get hit by them, it acts a little differently than you might expect otherwise. One of the main things this helps with is understanding not just range, but whether or not you even need to block in certain situations. Seeing your opponent throw out a move that you are very, very familiar and comfortable with often means you can stand literally just outside the range at which it will hit you and just not do anything about it. As you get better, or at least more experienced in the game, it can also lead to other scenarios where you simply backdash out of things that technically are entering your attack space as you are doing it. Some characters have better backdashes than others, and that's the same sort of thing. I feel like they dropped the storyline or whatever it is that is related to Bison's reaction to Necalli, or perhaps it was just there to foreshadow the story mode.
Round 1. Fight.
That interaction is a good first step for understanding, and there's another. Because of the way that it works when you do hit Necalli with the Crawling Beast out, you'll find yourself more often than not finding that you can get around the move without having to worry about being hit by it as often as you might expect. Similarly, understanding you can afford to try to actually go through it is important. You'll notice the number of times that Just Fine has literally been literally a moment outside of Necalli's sweep range. But this isn't just being outside of range of sweep. In many cases so far you've seen it's becoming outside of the range of sweep by standing up. Since one's hurt boxes in this game are slightly wider when crouching, it means you can literally get your opponent to do a move that should hit you if you are crouching but will whiff if you are standing. If you're not familiar with this, I don't necessarily suggest testing it out too often. But it is, again, experience-based. You can come up with ways to make this work for you. And long experience with many matchups leads to you doing it more often. Similarly, as you saw just for a moment just now, it's possible to know that a move is not going to continue into a combo or into a good hit from your own side simply because you're slightly too far away, and as a result not try to confirm the combo that will fail anyway, and therefore be better off. This is one of the most important things that you can try to pick up while watching high-level players or mid-level players who are particularly good at the concept. But actually converting that into the ability to do anything with this information is not easy. I can't even say that it specifically takes a lot of practice, because the thing that's happening isn't very similar to what one normally thinks of as practice in this game type. We do have bots that somewhat help with this sort of awareness, both to speed up your capacity to see the things in question, and just you fight bots long enough, you'll see some weird things happen, and maybe you can learn to recreate those weird things when you want to. This is where you also start to understand the concept of evasive moves. Moves whose sole purpose in standard flow is to have a different way of letting you manipulate your hurt box so your opponent cannot do anything. Or so that their standard option that they might have thought to use doesn't work out for them. There is another perfect example of a situation in which one might decide, even though it is technically definitely going to be a trade, I, the player, benefit from going for this anyway. Necalli was low enough on health that sliding and accepting the slide trade was a better option for just fine than just letting the shield be up there, that shield that would allow Necalli to recover from stun. Games that are heavy on neutral play, even close range neutral play, bring this in more and more, and the higher your experience rises, if you've learned to look at it, the more likely it is to be the thing you're able to do. Still don't remember which one. Usually that one bar of ping means that something weird might happen later, but not necessarily, so let's give it a try. And I'll play Colleen this time, because while Chun-Li and Bison do have lots of weird interactions, they're mostly aerial and even harder to explain than the ground ones. Similarly, if Just Fine chooses to change character, it won't matter as much because Colleen has this sort of interaction with lots of people. This is more likely to be a costume change than a character change, but we'll see. Nope, character change. That means Even here, I'm actually making this decision of which of these to use based on that fact. With Ken, I will often use her V skill too, because Ken likes to stand at places where her other moves don't do well, but she just barely manages to grab him if he goes for certain things. Whereas with Juri, Juri will shut you down most of the time you try to use this move, because she simply is putting up enough of a shield in front of herself most of the time. And similarly, if you can get her to do that, then you've got a better option. But simply having the option to strike into those shields with your advancing parry means your opponent is less likely to do them. Similarly, my opponent has to shift to not really charging up Fuha as much, because I can just hit her for doing even that. These two end up in much more close range neutral, even though I'm technically using Vanity Step quite a lot. I did switch to using the correct one, so it wasn't as bad. And there's another example of the same thing I'm talking about. I know Juri's going to hit me when I Vanity Step. The question is, what is she going to hit? In that case, for example, I used the wrong one, so I couldn't do anything misleading. So by playing around that hitbox interaction, it's possible to put more pressure on the opponent as a whole. And my opponent similarly has put more pressure on me that I must do these things. I can't play quietly, and I usually can't get the parry even when I expect the attack. Not because, oh, Juri is hitting all of these attack buttons that can't be parried, but simply because I'm spending too much time doing literally everything else. I have no idea what the lag thinks it's doing now. Cut that out. should have gone for EX parry there, I think. But I did not think of it. Because I don't normally get to play this matchup often enough for this to be in the experience space, which is kind of the point I was making before. That should have been Vanity Step, for example. For the same reason. It also allows you to be much more comfortable moving around in the corner, simply because your mind is able, once you've practiced it enough, to quickly switch between this is happening because I want it to, and this is happening because it has to. Combo drop. That, for example, is perfectly illustrating what I'm talking about. There's no way that without enough experience with your own character that you would know that was even possible, far less a good idea. Similarly there. I know that Jury's sweep and good counterattacks don't necessarily reach against max range Colleen sweep. But the thing is, I think at certain ranges you can get out of that by blocking the first hit, crouching, and then letting yourself step away. I think there is enough of a gap for that. In certain other characters, this is a definite gap, and you can learn things about how to do this by risking it all and trying to backdash out of weird situations. Is it a great idea? It depends on what your goal for the day is. Against Zombie Rabbit, I will of course not play Colleen because it does not, in that matchup, show the same thing. That's a lot of trying to figure out specific outplay responses. Whereas this is wiggling. This is a lot of wiggling. In fact, if you spend some time watching just the sheer amount of time we two spend very close to each other and only barely reaching or not reaching with strikes, it's like 50% of the match sometimes. Obviously, once you do reach with a strike, a combo happens, but we often go right back to doing the same thing. Because while I could attempt to get zoning done by just hitting heavy punch, it doesn't work too well against my current opponent, so it's not a great idea to use this as my default. I'll just get blocked and nothing will happen. Telegraph that one, I think. And that was insufficient for what I was trying to do. Seems we have still some space, but a lot of players have joined who don't seem to have good ping visible to me. I'm not sure what that actually means in this case. It might be nothing. Even there, Omni dashing out of that is a matter of being absolutely certain, for whatever reason, that I had to delay it, which was true. I'm not sure why Omni knows this, but it is true. Did I drop this? No. For once I did not. I had to relax a lot to get this combo to work. But against Laura, life leads are not real, so... And I'm not sure that I actually had a stun from there. Because if I had hit with the other part of the combo in the other way, it probably should have stunned. But she often surprises me. Similarly there. Omni knows, wait, why did you get hit by that? You're not supposed to get hit by that way. Dodging is important. Should have confirmed it. One useful result of it is that you get to build up a lot more meter, because you don't spend as much time having to use the meter in neutral if your opponent is willing to fight you in much the same way. It is another good reason why you find me talking about players who back off or try to run away. They're not only managing to prevent you from getting good offense on them by other methods, they are also managing to prevent you from gaining much in terms of meter. I'm not sure if that was an attempted sway, but I think I have that meaty down to the point where you can't actually sway it. Didn't run out in time. And that's my fault for not watching closely enough. I saw the meter low, I decided, okay, back to focusing on other things, but there was still enough meter to get the sway. That was an almost good decision, but it didn't quite work out. My opponent had enough meter that I might be able to get one more interaction. Nope, too visible again. And in this case, that was just the same mistake. Unfortunately, it's hard to talk about these things in matches because they're usually happening so fast that unless you are already at the point where you can tell what's going on, me trying to explain it is just going to have you looking back at footage to figure out, wait, what was that you were just talking about? Did not expect that to land. You can see from the way this can go back and forth that it does make more sense if you aren't otherwise certain of what to do with yourself to back off more. Aw, I forgot that doesn't work. But I don't remember why that doesn't work. Fortunately, that move has lots of range, and there's no good reason to do hake into nothing. So, that was the best response, and I'll just take it as, well, that still technically favors me, because that's my opponent using all their meter, and me leaving me with a lot, in a fight that normally is somewhat dependent on it. That's also knowledge. A lot of characters don't have that capacity and get caught by that. Others just always have an option.
You win. It's go time.
So yeah, I'm gonna hope that these people have good connections, but I have no idea if they all have good connections to each other. And that's the reason? That might be worth looking into, sort of. It's not always as obvious whether or not the things I'm saying on stream are related to the people in the lounge, so this particularly happens when people are less comfortable talking even on stream chat or don't necessarily speak the same language I do to the level required to feel as if they were communicating well, but still have maybe some interest in hearing what I have to say. In which case, the obvious answer would be to let them fight it out and then say what I have to say then for them. But I really don't know at the moment. This is another matchup where this comes up a lot. The Kali needs to get into really specific spaces to be advantaged here. But if you just play Chun as absolute keep out, you'll eventually die from the fact that you're trying to play the absolute keep out. I find this to be the more frustrating way to deal with this matchup. To do that, that is. Because Nikali is relatively easy to control if he's out of position, even a little bit. But trying to make sure that he never gets near you just leads to him finding the right timing to jump. And if you fought against this character, he's not so popular now, but if you have, you know that a jump from Nikali is a big deal. Particularly as he gets more and more meter. Of any kind, really. But because she has so many good lateral options, and he doesn't have as many convoluted ones, you can tend to play a little bit more quietly and specifically intending to deal with only making sure he doesn't jump at you. I was gonna get that reversal, and even that was another trick. That was hitting with only the very tip of the first or second hit of legs, so that if my opponent does V-reversal, I haven't hit with any other hits, and I think that actually turns the super input into an OS, but I'm not confident in that because I haven't tried it enough times. Which means, obviously, as you've just seen demonstrated, I have to keep trying it until I know for sure that it doesn't work. Every time I try it and it does work, then I guess it doesn't matter as much, right? This is basically similar to the Guile matchup, is that Guile gets fireballs. But that is sort of the moment I'm talking about. My opponent basically had that from that jump, but unfortunately dropped their combo. I think I probably could have died, because Nikali can definitely build half a bar of meter just off the combos, V-cancels, and so on. Half life to dead? Not certain, but there might have only been one interaction left after it. There we go. An entire sequence of being in the perfect space the entire time. Because if my opponent had been even slightly off, I would have been able to get those risky hake I was using to do something for me. Very well then. That was a loss I deserved on every level. The more ranges you learn, the more daring you can be in general. This is across all games. You can just do crazy things all day if you want to, if you've learned enough weird hitboxes. Like that. Here's one weird hitbox interaction.
You win.
That uppercut cannot hit you. It can go either way, but it will not hit you. Ever. This is very important for my opponent to know, so it is important that I show off that particular interaction. I think you can get the medium to hit, but that one can't hit. Looks like everyone else has headed out. see, this player is usually hard to deal with because their connection isn't so great, but they join anyway. I'm not certain why, but we normally at least give them the chance. We know from fighting them that it's not specifically that they're here to just lag to win, because sometimes when they win they leave anyway because I guess the connection wasn't good enough. Seems they just want to hang out and we're the best people to hang out with or something. But this is going to be terrible regardless, remember this. See? That said, it's really rough for a different reason. It's Ken. It's Ken playing like the complex style, where there's a lot of tick throws, there's a lot of specifically placed jumps into throw. I really should just assume to throw in many situations, but strictly speaking, this is not defendable. So I can't honestly say why they do this at all. Yeah, when you can't even see which jump button he used, you're usually better off not trying. But it's not impossible, it's just undefendable. So I don't know if they came to like learn that. Learning better offense is a relatively realistic and useful thing to pick up. I don't think they even know themselves whether or not I was going to hit. The other problem is you can't tell what to bait versus what to not. Because technically I should bait nearly everything, right? My opponent knows, they do at least know it's laggy enough to assume I should uppercut nearly everything. Or maybe they're just, you know, a true Ken who just uppercuts nearly everything anyway. Which means that optimizations for my own combos to get the maximum damage would actually be to never finish them. But I'm still not really sure, because from the other perspective, this player can't just not uppercut, right? It doesn't make sense to do that. Like, style plan-wise, it doesn't make sense to not uppercut. Don't even know. Still, therefore, it's an exercise in understanding enough about hitboxes and hurtboxes that you don't even have to care, you don't even know. You literally don't have to know what is happening in order to still function. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like their connection's any better today than it usually is, so I don't think anyone else is likely to actually fight them. Because if you cannot even detect the throw because you literally can't see it happening, there's nothing to do. So sorry, Jetfitter, you have apparently not gotten a better connection to us recently. Can't even finish that one. But in this case, it doesn't matter.
You win.
Street Fighter's work on their rollback netcode has made things a little better, but it hasn't necessarily made it so that you will be able to have good experiences. It just makes certain things choppier outright. We do have server maintenance tonight, for those of you who care. But I don't think it's until about 11 Eastern time. Still, it is true that this is not really plausible. I don't know if it's good on their end or something, or if they're just the sort of person who doesn't care. But this is basically implausible, defense-wise. And I don't think it's good on their end, otherwise I think they'd punish the sweep or something. Or be able to finish that setup. Can't punish. So, as usual, I'm gonna kick you.
You lose.
I don't know why you come all around all the time. And I don't know why it's a ritual to play Ken anyway. But you'll get at least one match before being booted off, as usual. Somehow that match always seems to be with me. Is it always with me? I'm not sure.
Let's do this. Round one.
I've been reminded of a different option altogether. One that doesn't come up because I don't usually think about the way PC players interact with Street Fighter. One thing that does cause a specific form of, let's call it lag in this game, is that your opponent's PC is not running the game at 60 frames per second to begin with. And I feel like there's a lot of games where that is in fact a big limiter for you. You can explicitly play the game on less powerful hardware, and the result will be similar to what you just saw. But from the other perspective, that would kind of explain some things, because it would simply mean that if that's their only available option, they've never seen the game run any differently to begin with. So the why does this match seem weird isn't weird to them.
Round 2. Fight.
So wherever and whoever you are, I hope to one day meet you in an offline match, maybe. Back to hitboxes. That, for example. Games that have long combos in them often still have ways that you can deal with this, because not every combo is perfect, let's say. Perfect referring to a combo that does not have any gaps or even weird things to happen. Especially this is for pressure strings that aren't always true combos. In quote-unquote anime-style games, knowing exactly when to tech to make your opponent's follow-up miss, make their reset fail, is very hitbox and hurtbox dependent in terms of understanding. Another instance. Creating a scenario in which your opponent most likely can't react to whatever you're doing. And then using the resultant hitbox or hurtbox interaction to confuse them or get some advantage. Usually it's jumping, but for Bison, since Bison can actually dash through other people's normals, it doesn't even have to be jumping.
Round 1. Fight.
If you find an opponent that seems to be jumping in spaces where they shouldn't, but never getting caught for it, no matter how you try, it's usually related to that. They will give you the impression that they're a very jumpy player, when really all that's happening is that they're jumping out of situations that are otherwise, to you, the person being jumped around, it looks like, why would you jump at that range? But they're just avoiding something that you didn't necessarily know was avoidable by jumping. I'm not sure it would have been a big hit had it not dropped, but it did drop. And that's kind of a problem.
Round 2. Fight.
So despite the fact that there will in fact be maintenance later, my understanding of the timing for that maintenance means we're probably still, as usual, keeping the lounge open for much more time than the stream itself. Where a stream is ending in about 10 minutes, the lounge can probably go on for up to another hour. If for whatever reason you want to participate but don't want to be streamed or, talked about. It's quite often the fact that in this sort of game, the reason the opponent jumps in those positions at all is because they expect that to happen. And therefore, once you've picked up this skill under normal circumstances, you can deal with a lot more things. In games where you have the capacity to sidestep things, it shifts the flow. These do fight like this in every game.
Final round.
Part of what one can do when you find yourself in that situation is to spend more time thinking about how you can attack but fail gracefully. Yes, that's the idea. But this does take quite a lot of time to learn. Failing gracefully in your attacking, when you've got just enough health for that to be a good idea, is a skill you have to pick up by playing the game more. Some games give you a lot more benefit for this style of play than others, though. All of that could easily have just been a setup to make Unrabbit use up more of that meter. And being willing to burst down some of Bison's meter to achieve the same goal.
Lara wins.
I hope my mic's been good today. I was told before that it wasn't doing so great.
Let's do this.
Oh, okay. That was the thing I was looking at before. In any case, I've been informed that maintenance might not be at the time I thought it was, which would be unfortunate, but we'll know at the end of stream because the server does put up the little message to tell you. And it will probably do so around the end of this match. Here's a matchup that Omni-Rabbit knows well, but it's a lot of, let's say, transformation. Because the 3 different styles of boxer have to be dealt with 3 different ways from the Lara side. One of them is a really long match with people blocking a lot and lots of claps being thrown and relatively poor conversions off of boxers' strikes. You're seeing a match that's quite like that now. This was my expectation for a really dumb reason, namely that most people who play this character in this style wear this costume. You might think that's just random, but it's actually related to something, possibly. This could be a Grappler Baki reference. If you're not familiar, just don't think about it too hard. Just know that there's a good reason why this costume might have some meaning to fans of that show. Particularly, not really, not in this color, but I don't think he has a red. He might have a red? If he doesn't have a red, this is probably the best one to use. Perfectly spaced. They literally just walked up and did it. So right now, both of these players are testing each other's execution, but not in the same way as we were talking about before. It's still largely hitbox related. The difficulty is in walking up to the right place and recognizing, wait, did I actually have enough time to do what I just did? Is this walk real? And the amount of time they spend in this matchup deciding, what was the distance between us again? Is this walk accurate? It's kind of high.
Lara wins. Round 1. Fight.
a lot of this is, have you moved to the exact right space beforehand as well? There's a perfect example. By not going for the hit, having been hit by the sweep before, the player was able to make sure that the sweep itself could be blocked. Expecting to wake up, and that could lead to problems. 30 minutes, indeed. Well, this is, therefore, obviously the last on-stream match of the night, and I'm not going to say the lounge is going to close, but in half an hour it's going to close whether we like it or not. If you do want to play against anyone in here, though, you can hop in basically right away. And we'll probably rotate around, but you might have to, like, mention which player you want to face, which you can only do by character. Another thing that you gain a lot from this is recognizing when your opponent has done this to you, when they have used a technique that will prevent you from finishing a combo, or from being able to use the standard attack you use to check them. Because while not every use of Boxer's dash punch is actually safe, there are a lot of characters that once they've hit the light punch to punish it, can't necessarily do anything anyway. And have to get used to the idea that the light punch to check him is all they get. That was a combo drop, and probably another one actually. Perfectly done. Another drop. Once you've learned to recognize enough moves, be that from our Boxer bot or any other methodology, you can definitely get some punishes you wouldn't expect to get otherwise. Or get yourself into punishing positions that you can start off faster.
Balrog wins.
Well, given the intensity of this one, we can't just end it here, so we're going to let the last match run. Even though we did start on time, was a little 5 to 10 minutes extra. The main thing that's happened here, I'd say, is that the Boxer player's style has shifted to the other kind. So while the clap is still required, the other method of basically hitting stand heavy punch and neutral jumping is the adaptation that needs to be made. More pressure also helps, but that has more to do with like the interactions of spacing than anything else. The stand heavy punch is capable of dealing a lot of damage in this matchup because it tends to crush counter Boxer just on the way in. And similarly, it tends to make the player less likely to just do things, even though that they can whiff punish themselves with the dash punch. That's not really different from just hitting the dash punch to begin with. So if you were worried at all, oh, dash punch might hit me, you really might as well just hit the heavy punch anyway a lot of the time. But what you can't see is that there's a range here. There's a range at which the heavy punch is a good idea, a range at which the clap is a good idea, and a range at which neutral jumping is a good idea. And it really comes down to how many dash punches you can afford to take before it starts to matter to you. I have no idea if this is laggy. They're both dropping things I don't expect them to drop. Like in that annoying way when you realize everything's just one frame off. Wait, what's the kill on this? Yes, okay. That brings us to the end of this stream. You can find all of our Street Fighter V bots and all of our other bots at our website 2-mk.org. Tomorrow's Tuesday Melt content, Wednesday night in Birth on Wednesday and Feeling Thursday streams are all scheduled to happen at 7:30 Eastern as normal, and if they don't happen, you will know because you will not be able to find any related tweet on our Twitter 2_MK_FGC. This has been really in 14 2MK. Good luck with your training and good night, everyone.